Welcome to another episode of Canopy Practice Success. Oh my goodness, that is my second time stumbling over that. I don't know if you can hear. I'm recovering from a small cold, so hopefully I'm not terrible to listen to today with my conversation with John Higgins. John, will you introduce yourself?
Yes. So hello, Casey, and hello, everyone who's watching us today. Thanks for joining us. So a little bit about my background. I am a CPA with the CITP credential, which stands for Certified Information Technology Professional. And that's an AI CPA specialty credential that lets me communicate to the marketplace that, yes, I'm a CPA, but I really focus on technology. I've been in the profession a long time, and for all that time, I've really focused on helping CPAs to understand emerging technologies and how to apply them. And during the course of my career, I started with a local CPA firm here in the Detroit, Michigan area. That's where I'm from. And then from there, I had two startup client advisory practices along the lines of client and technology advisory for CPAs. Sold both of those. The first one I sold into BDO, and I was a partner in BDO's national practice here in Detroit for a few years. And then most recently, CPA Crossings, which started as a technology advisory company in the early 2000s and kind of morphed into a pretty good sized continuing professional education platform for CPAs. We at CPA Crossings, we basically got together a group of professionals who could speak on a lot of different topics for CPAs, and we distributed those as webinars. It was all webinars through state CPA associations. And so that company was purchased by the Pennsylvania Institute of CPAs in 2020, so they could use it to kind of expand their offerings to their members and get more involved in online learning. But I've seen the whole landscape of emerging technologies for CPAs. I like to joke that I started in the profession before we had electronic spreadsheets, which somebody as young as Casey doesn't even know what I'm talking about. How can we have a world without spreadsheets, right? So I've seen all that, and I've seen the whole evolution of transitioning to the cloud computing. And then, of course, now everything's all about AI, which is really exciting. I really enjoy it because I like, new technologies, learning about them and trying to figure out how we can put them to work. And there's going to be no shortage of ways to put AI to work. That's for sure.
Oh, I couldn't agree more with that last statement. And maybe we touch on that a bit as well in our conversation. But with all of your many years in consulting and providing education, do you have any thoughts or strategies on how CPAs should be approaching this CPE requirement? I love that it's a thing in the industry. I love that, have a little nudge, a little fire under you to like keep you updated and learning constantly. But what recommendations do you have to make sure that people are getting the most of that?
Yeah, I think as a CPA, and I know because I've seen it for my whole career, a lot of CPAs are just focused on, I got to get my 40 hours of
Yeah.
education each year, and I don't care where I get it. Sometimes they go for the cheapest option, and I understand all that. But in this day and age, I think it is so important as a professional to make sure you're investing in the right kind of education. This whole area of technology is just, we're at the very early stages of, I think, a very major transformation in the way we deliver services to clients as CPAs, whether you're working in an accounting practice or maybe you're a CFO working in a corporate environment. But the way we deliver services is definitely about to go a major transformation. So as CPAs, I think you have to be strategic about how you invest your time for education. And there's lots of good opportunities. All the education I get, Casey, frankly, is, the CPE is like secondary. I could
Yeah.
almost care less if I get CPE. I just want to learn. And I'll get my 40 hours of CPE. I'll get that one way or another. But, so right now for me, I'm spending all my learning time primarily on AI because it's moving so fast and has so much potential. There's a lot of hype around it for sure,
Hmm.
but it's not all hype. It's real, and it's going to have a major impact. So if I was advising a CPA, I'd say, invest a little bit of time at the beginning of each year thinking about what do you really want to learn? What should you be learning? And then figure out what are the avenues of resources to get the kind of learning that you're looking for.
Yeah, you said beginning of the year, and I kind of want to dig into that a little bit more. Do you really mean January?
Well, so here's how it goes for CPAs. The cycle
Okay.
is that their best time for getting education is really like November and December,
Yeah.
and then May, June, July, August, because they're really busy, of course, from the middle of January through the middle of March
Yeah.
with tax work and busy season work and so on. And then they come out of there. So what happens if you plan now, if you plan early in the year, then when you come out of your busy season, you already kind of know where you want to go, and you don't spend a lot of time thinking about, well, what education should I get? And there's a lot of good conferences out there, and those are on the schedule usually pretty early. So it's not too early to figure
Yeah.
out where you want to get your education from.
Have you ever seen firms divvy out types of learning, or say like, or even just raise their hand and be like, "Hey, want to elect to be the AI expert in our firm, or I want to be the client relationship management expert of our firm," or do you see them just kind of, "I got to get it, so I'll just, to your point, get the cheapest thing."
Yeah, I'd say unfortunately that a lot of firms, especially when you're dealing with the smaller firms, because they may or may not have an HR department, they may not have a dedicated person to actually help them guide them through what they should be, focusing their learning on. So a lot of them just take, whatever they're interested in, which is fine, but it's typically not strategic. But when I do technology advisory services, when I offer that to accounting firms, I always talk about champions. So whether it's using a particular software tool like Canopy, or using ChatGPT for generative AI, whatever the tool is, that you really should have a champion, or depending on the size of your firm, maybe multiple champions. And those champions, one of their goals should be to really immerse themselves in education in that particular area of focus. And then they can bring that to the rest of the firm and share what they learn, share their knowledge with the firm, at the appropriate level. Not everybody has to be an expert in everything. It's just not practical.
Oh,
But
yeah, yeah, you can't. And
yeah,
yeah, I'm just curious. I know, like, one of our goals, just even within our marketing team right now, is really centered on AI, and what tools can we use to make our jobs smoother or better. And I bring this up. I don't usually talk about my function, or or even like our team here at Canopy on the podcast. But I bring it up because it signals a lot to our investors as well, to the members of the board, that we are investing in the technology and leveling up our skills. And I'd say that same concept applies to your clients, where you can, when you make claims of like, or even put your best foot forward, and you're showing that you are progressing as a firm, whatever that might look like. But an easy way that does translate to clients being able to understand that you are improving is technology, is the way they interact with you through, whatever medium it is that you're utilizing, and then AI. Just it all reflects to your clients on you improving your business, and I think in that way too helps retain them.
yeah, and I think every business has at least two primary goals. One is to be profitable,
Hmm.
and one is to build value. So at some point, have an exit strategy, for that business. And in the case of an accounting practice, an important part of that exit strategy, to your point, Casey, is
Yeah.
really to show that you have been leveraging technology. You're keeping your firm, modernized, going through the digital transformation, as we like to say, and that will be much more appealing to a potential suitor who might want to buy your practice.
Yes.
Because if they walk into your practice to see a bunch of paper and a bunch of file folders, that's going to just lower the value to them in their eyes. It's going to say, this is a problem because we got to
Yeah.
then help this firm go through a digital transformation.
Yeah.
We'd rather acquire a firm that has already been through the digital transformation.
Yeah. Like trying to sell your home with a hole in the roof.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems silly, when we put it that way, but how often are we seeing people getting to retirement, or wanting to sell, or even exiting in some form or fashion, right? But particularly, I'm thinking retirement age because they're tired or, just want to relax and call it a
Yeah.
day. Um, Thinking I'll just keep operating the way I want to operate. I know this, we're comfortable, and then when I'm ready to retire, I'll sell it. And
Yeah.
I mean, curious, how frequently are you seeing that actually happening?
Quite a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
Majority of the time?
Yeah, I would say with the smaller the firms, like the small practitioners that maybe 5 to 10 person firms, it's like they just like what they're doing,
Yeah.
and they complain about working a lot of hours, but they actually like it. There's no question in my mind about that. I've seen it for many years, and so they don't really spend a lot of time thinking about how to have an exit strategy until they get to the point where say, like you said, I mean, I'm tired now. I think, yeah, maybe it's time to get out. And I would also make the point, Casey, that it's not just about getting your business or your practice in shape for an acquisition.
Yeah.
It's about being able to hire people
Yes.
because you want young people to come into your firm. They expect you to be digital. They want digital. They want to be, and digital today means embracing AI. And in fact, I hear a lot from smaller firms about, it's tough for us to compete for talent against the large firms that can pay the larger, higher salaries. But I would say, I could come in and tell you exactly how to recruit a young person into a small firm because you can give them so much more latitude and responsibility. You get into a larger firm, you start to get pigeonholed, just the nature
Yeah.
of the beast, But in
Yeah.
a small firm, boy, you can offer the world, and you get somebody that says, "Hey, I need you to come into my practice as a young person, understanding AI technology. Help me figure out in my practice how to put this to work." And you're going to have, I think, very good success recruiting somebody into even the smallest of firms.
Oh, couldn't agree more. And again, I like never do this on the podcast, but you're talking about things that are just so applicable to me personally too. Like I could go, we've got a big Adobe building. Everybody knows Adobe. I feel
Yeah,
like even if you don't use them, it's a big name.
sure.
We've got a big Adobe campus just 15 minutes from our Canopy office. I could easily get a job there and make more money and get killer benefits. They're a huge
Mhm.
company. They can offer lots of fun things. I choose to be at Canopy because of what working at a smaller technology company than a behemoth like Adobe can do for me. But the thing is, like, it's not just working for Canopy and the size of the company, it's working for my specific manager, our CEO, all of the leaders as well, and their vision and how that impacts my day to day. So, to your point about like attracting talent, um, same thing, it's the same thing in an accounting
Yep.
firm that, yeah, you just can't sleep on how much that impacts your attractiveness. When you're interviewing candidates, it's not like the employee has a, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Has the advantage, I guess, over the one seeking employment. It goes both ways. Like
Sure.
each party has power and the ability to interview each other and say, no, you're not the right fit because I'm seeing XYZ about your firm that shows me what my life would be like, what I'd be battling, or the success rate I might have, the satisfaction I might get out of my day to day.
Yeah. And, we all want purpose in what we do as our
Yes.
careers. And, so I think in a lot of cases you can have more purpose in a smaller firm because you can have a bigger impact just by the nature of it.
Yeah, and even if and some people might be able to come in and see um, a lack of modern technology as an opportunity as long as the leader is showing that like the maybe humility of like, hey, I need help evaluating this,
Yeah.
come in and help me change this. Like that is so attractive to some people, to me in particular. Like I love that, the excitement of transforming something. So it's not just like, to your point, um just because you haven't updated, it's not totally going to hurt your ability to attract talent, but you need to meet the talent you're interviewing with this opportunity and maybe find a way to really sell it to them because it
Yeah.
can be a huge resume builder.
Absolutely. And that's the kind of people you want in your firm, right? That
Yep.
somebody wants to take on the challenge and has a thirst for, trying things out, and being innovative.
Yeah. So with firms like this, because you say it does happen the majority of the time, where we're still um, participating in this digital transformation. What are some things that these individuals should wrap their brain around? Expectations of how long it might take, where to start, what questions to ask, things like that.
In regards to the digital transformation, is that
Hmm.
what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so ideally, you start with developing some strategy. And again, that's not typically the case when you get into the smaller firms. It's oftentimes more reactive, reactive to we're just not happy with our tax software anymore. Let's go find something new. Or I was at this conference and I learned about this new software that looks really cool. So the partner goes out and he or she sees this at the conference. They say, okay, we're going to put this in. They just bring it back to the firm, and now the people that work in the firm have to figure out how to make it all work. So having a strategy is definitely beneficial because when it comes to technology, Casey, there's so many ways in a firm to spend money, and
Yeah.
it's so easy to spend it in the wrong things, lower priority things or things that can just take you down a rabbit hole, and it's also so it's not just deciding what to acquire, but also when. And
Yes.
AI is a great example. It's like, when do I jump on the AI bandwagon? Well, I think as individual CPA professionals, we have to get on it now just to learn how to crawl before we walk, before we run.
Yep.
But when you're talking about big investments in a firm, you got to really figure out when's the right time to make that big investment in the firm. So starting with a strategy, and that can be a simple strategy. Maybe a few meetings with a small representative group of people in the firm. Say, where are we having the most inefficiencies? Where are we spending a lot of labor effort to get things done? And therefore, let's tackle those areas first. And gosh, there's often so much in the way of what I call low hanging fruit. Like I'll just give you a simple example: password management. I've been doing
Oh,
webinars on password managers for 15 years now, and when I'm speaking to CPA groups, like maybe 5% of them are using a password manager. So I'm thinking, well, what are you using? Are you still using Excel spreadsheets? Are you writing it down on paper, or are you using the same password for everything? It's like, I mean, a password manager is a low cost item that has cybersecurity benefits for the practice, but also has efficiency benefits for the user. So it's a classic low hanging fruit. Let's just go do this. And there's a lot of those opportunities in most firms.
yeah. Okay, so starting with the strategy, I like your point too of like getting key people in a room and really hitting on pain points. I've done similar things like that, and I call them a pre-mortem because we talk about
Nice.
post-mortems.
Uh
But
huh.
like, let's imagine that like the firm's not in business in 6 months because we can't process anymore because our systems break, our internet's gone out for 2 weeks, and who knows.
Yeah.
But what's the worst case, and how can we extrapolate on that and then take those problems and solve for them, and then to your point, prioritize. Um, that and what that does is gets people bought in to what needs to be prioritized, which is huge, so that you don't run into the issue of what you said of like, oh, I saw this flashy new thing at a show and I
Right.
got it. So let's figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's next after that? We've got a strategy. Are there top tools that you recommend? I mean, you said a password management. That one's so easy, but yeah, to your point, adds a lot of security.
Yeah, and well, along the same lines too, as you're looking at kind of developing a plan, a technology plan, is look at the tools you currently have and
Mm,
make sure you're getting the most out of them. So often I see where, gosh, only a fraction of the capabilities are being used. I use Microsoft 365 as an example. There's so much capability across that ecosystem, but typically very little of it is really being taken advantage of. So that's another point where it's not about just going out always and getting new technology or spending more on technology tools, but just really focusing on what you can get more out of what you already have. Um, and then whatever the initiative is, let's say you decide we need a better file storage system, we need a better practice management solution. Well, then you got to go out and somebody's got to go out and get educated on what's out there in the marketplace, and that's where conferences can be very helpful. You go to some of the CPA conferences. I know Canopy is at a lot of those conferences, right? And so
Hmm.
that's your great opportunity as a practitioner to go and talk to the people that are with those software publishers, and ask them the questions and just learn more about what is out there. Because frankly, in our profession, there's been obviously some very large players that have really dominated the market. But I would also say they tend to be really slow at being innovative, has been
Hmm.
my experience. Sometimes I look at products that I used back in, hate to admit it, back in the 80s, and sometimes I look at them today and say, gosh, this still kind of doesn't look like
Yeah.
it's changed a whole lot. They try to be cloud enabled, but uh, I always say when you want to go to the cloud, if you have the ability, finding a software solution that was built natively for the cloud is going to be a whole lot better, because
Yeah.
it's going to take advantage of the technology, as opposed to trying to be kind of retrofitted to be a cloud application when
Yep.
originally back in the day it was a on-premise solution. But so you have to go out and find out what's available in the market, and do some research. And always, I think it's important to talk to other practitioners. It's such a basic thing, but it's very rarely done. It's like, okay, if I'm going to go down this path of looking at this particular solution, I want to talk to some other firms that are using it. And when you talk CPA to CPA about something like that, my experience has been that CPAs really like to be candid when they're talking with a fellow practitioner. They're not going to sugarcoat it. Of course, the software publisher is going to give you references of people that have been successful with the tool. That's what you'd want, right? Because I want to know that you can be successful with the tool. Now, just tell me how to be successful with the tool and what should I watch out for. Maybe it
Yeah.
takes more to implement it than I was led to believe, or maybe I need to make sure I invest in training, because that's such a common um, mistake that firms make, is they just buy the tool, they
Yeah.
subscribe to the tool, but don't really invest in planning the deployment and training the people on how to use it. And the training is not just how to use it, not just how to click the mouse clicks and so forth. It's how are we going to do our workflow now with
Yeah.
this new tool? So if
Oh,
we're getting a new billing system, how are we going to do billing going forward?
I love that you said that. Um, and I have a few other things I want to add quickly as well. But to double down on that, English is not Spanish, Spanish is not English. They translate well to each other, more or less. English is harder to translate into Arabic and vice versa, right? We need to think the same way about our systems, and that you cannot just take what you've been doing, buy a new system, and do it the exact same way. If that were the case, then just stick with your old system.
Right, right.
The part of the process of getting a new software or system is also evaluating how can we be better, and where does this software excel, and thinking more not about features but maybe philosophies and executions. What is it that we're trying to accomplish? And then, yeah, of course, do we have to change the way we do it because the way the software is built? I think that's really important. um, but the other thing I wanted to say, just as you were talking about, evaluating vendors, my personal preference and recommendation is to evaluate no less than three. If you're looking at one and you're like about to sign the contract, hard stop. Like, evaluate that. There's a reason why there are multiple tools. We have built a rubric for people to use. It is a Google sheet,
Uh-huh.
that has a whole list of functionality that should at least get you started. But evaluate, look at different ones, and weigh what does what better, whatever's most important to you. And then, yeah, to your point, talk to the community. I don't know if you have other recommended spots other than shows, but I see a lot of chatter in Reddit, and a decent amount in LinkedIn. But there are online communities as well as in person communities. I know there are lots of local communities, lots of opportunity to talk to each other and talk shop.
Yeah, no question about it. It's just anytime you can get together with other CPA practitioners, they're using something. Uh, I really like your idea about looking at three solutions, because you might look at the third solution and say, "Gosh, that feature never even came up in the first two
Yeah. Yeah.
solutions I looked at." Then it makes you think, go back to the other two and say, "Do they have that capability, or why don't they have that capability?" So that's a really good idea. The part of the challenge is because most CPAs are pretty busy, right? They don't have a lot of
Yeah.
downtime, so it's like easy to avoid looking at three. You might say, "I'll look at two, and that's good enough." But if they can invest that extra time, any time invested up front in evaluation and planning will pay big dividends on the back
Yes.
end during implementation. And gosh, I've had enough
Especially,
experience seeing implementations go wrong.
yeah, and I've heard enough chatter too of um, people purchasing something and being like, "Well, I just did this last year, but it's not suiting my needs, but I don't want to do it again this year." Especially if there's ever a client portal attached to any decision too, because they don't want to do it to their clients. It's like,
Right.
well, then make sure you evaluate it properly the first time.
Yeah, for sure. And the portal is a great example because sometimes we make decisions for our clients about what we think they want or don't want, uh, like a portal.
Yeah.
And you got to make sure you communicate to them what the portal can do for them. And more and more, we're all transitioning. We're all going through this digital transformation. Some people are, almost completely down the path. Others are still at the beginning. But you have a lot of clients typically who are going to be eagerly wanting to adopt new technology because everybody's, we're all watching news and, YouTubes and things like that. And we see that, gosh, this is changing. Things are changing and we need to get on board. So yeah, I think that it's good to spend the time to do your research and invest what's out there and investigate what's out there.
Yeah, and I'd even make a plug here too. I mean, we use seasonal talent during tax season to help with the accounting work.
Hmm.
Don't shy away from hiring seasonal talent to help with evaluating software or not seasonal talent. Let's even scratch that. Hiring someone like yourself. There are lots of opportunities like that where you can look to an expert to help you evaluate your tech stack and your efficiencies or lack thereof, and
Yeah.
then work with them on a solution to get something in place and adopted well.
Yeah, and if you get a truly independent advisor, he or she is going to be able to be objective about
Hmm.
what are your needs, or maybe it's not the software that's the problem. Maybe it's the way
Yeah.
you are organized as a
Yeah.
firm or your approach towards technology. So it's the tools just one part of it, right? You got the tools,
Yes,
you got the
100%.
people, and you got the processes, and they all three need to be looked at and evaluated um, as you go about any digital transformation initiative.
I love that. I'm going to double down on the tools, the people, and the processes.
Yeah,
I love that. I
yeah, you
think
got to look
that's
at all three.
a good way to end. In fact, I mean, we probably could have even talked more about that because there's so much to unpack with how you approach each to make sure that you're successful as a firm. But thank you again, John. This was great. It goes to show like you really can't sleep on technology. It moves every day, especially
Yeah.
with AI, and it's going to be really exciting to see how this impacts accounting.
Oh yeah, we're in for some interesting times, no question about it, and we'll see how it goes the next couple of years. But it's going to move fast. So thanks
It,
for having me, Casey. I appreciate it.
yeah, you're welcome.